Kia ora everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Renee. I like to read books and then talk about them on the internet. Hi, hello. A few things to address. One, I'm sick. That's why my voice sounds like this. Maybe it doesn't sound so bad to you, but it sounds like I am very stuffy, which I am. So if I don't sneeze, cough, sniff throughout this video, I'm very sorry. I'm not feeling my best, but I'm here anyway. No, I really wanted to get this video done, so I'm doing it today. Unfortunately, I'm also sick today, so that is a bit of a bummer. Number two, my hair is a bit frizzy, weird, but I think it's maybe translating well to camera. It kind of looks like chic and a tousled hair kind of way. Three, this. Yes, I have clipped my Rode mic to a microfiber duster. No, I couldn't clip my Rode mic to my top today because it's so flimsy. So I've seen other people do this on the internet where they've turned their Rode mics into handheld ones by clipping them to things. And this is all I had that I could think of. So that's my story. Today I'm going to be talking about everything that I read in January. Yeah, a pretty good reading month, I would say, overall. I read 7 books, DNF'd 1. Read 1,848 pages. There's a weird way of saying 1,848. I had an average star rating of 3.57. And I read 6 fiction and 1 non-fiction, which happened to be an essay collection. So those are the stats for anyone that's interested in that. And let me talk about the books. First book I started the year off with was Adolescence Leaves by Nathan Truong. If you don't know who Nathan is, he is one of the best people making content on the internet, both Instagram, YouTube. He has a Substack. I will link his channel, his Instagram below. You can find all of his corresponding accounts that way, I think. But no, Nathan is great. He is one of the most, if not the most, voracious consumer of all things cultural that I've ever come across. He's interested in art, literature, film, music, fashion, food, and you can see all that kind of stuff in his vlogs. Like, his vlogs are so jam-packed with just good content of his life and the things that he sees and does, and he's just so fun to watch, and he has critical, intelligent, eloquent things to say about all those topics, which is another wild thing about him. He is amazing. So I recommend you go and follow him or subscribe to him if you aren't already. Make your life better. Nathan is also a talented writer. He published this book and I got to read it. The best decision I ever made was reading this book on the 1st of January. This is a fragmentary, poetic coming-of-age story that focuses on our unnamed protagonist who is remembering his first major love. Through that, you're getting an array of different memories and emotions, and it really captures what it feels like to not only live through those momentous times in a young person's life, but also how they shape us, the importance they hold, how we remember them. It's a very special book. It's quiet and tender and soft. It doesn't diminish any of those young feelings. It holds equal amounts of weight to a young person's memory of their first great love that you would to an old person remembering the same thing. It definitely doesn't ever make light of a young person going through, those high-stake moments in life where everything you're experiencing feels major. I loved that about it. Nothing felt insignificant. It all felt important, and it was really beautiful. So yeah, I'm very grateful to Nathan for letting me read his work, and I highly recommend you buy his book, but also read more of your friends' writing this year. That's one thing I recommend. It's really special to be able to do that, and I think it's important to also support those around you that are creative in that way, and being able to share in that is always going to be something that they'll appreciate, and you will as well. Okay, next I DNF'd The New Animals by Pip Adam. This is a contemporary workplace novel, maybe like an industry workplace novel, set in Auckland in 2016. We have these 3 main characters who are veterans to the fashion industry, and they have become uninspired and quite jaded towards their professions and the work that they do within it, and are finding themselves kind of working with and under a new set of up-and-coming crowds in this industry who have these new ideas and perhaps bring with them a little bit of naivety about that. And yeah, these characters are kind of having to reassess their lives, their careers, where they've found themselves. Has all the setup to be like a great book and one that I would really love, but somehow I DNF'd it at 60 or 70 pages. It's a 200-page book, and that many pages in, I didn't feel any kind of investment towards these characters. I wasn't interested in knowing their backstories anymore. There was just no spark with these characters that made me care about them, and so I didn't think that it was going to happen in the rest of the book, which I later found out through Goodreads that the weirdest shit happens in the second half of that book, which I would never have seen coming, and I'm glad that I didn't continue on with. So yeah, that was disappointing because I felt like it was going to be like something close to home. It had an interesting setup, and yeah, I just wasn't ultimately happy with the way that it executed it. Okay, next I read Crook Manifesto by Colson Whitehead. This is the second book in the Ray Carney series of books, the first one being Harlem Shuffle, which I read when it first came out and obviously loved enough to read the second book, which I also loved. But this series follows a man named Ray Carney. He is a furniture salesman. He's a family man. He's trying to do what he can to provide for his family. And he is also operating a low-level crime side hustle through his furniture store. These books are set in Harlem during the 60s and 70s, so you have this hot, fast-paced, crime-riddled backdrop of New York City, and along with that you also have political unrest and racial tensions that were happening at the time. The second book picks up at the beginning of the 70s, and it spans 9 years, so you have 3 parts that kind of jump ahead in time. We meet Ray Carney as he's managed to kind of do better for himself than where we left off in the last novel. He has bought a bigger shop. He has moved his family out of the neighborhood and apartment they were in. And he's trying to go straight. He's trying to get out of the game, and as hard as he tries, there's always something that pulls him back in, and it is the need to provide for his family yet again in this one. The other character that is prominent in this series is a character named Pepper. He is a muscle man. He is very quiet, dangerous looking man who you wouldn't want to cross. He gets the job done, but he's also just trying to do the work that he needs to do to survive. I think the thing that makes these books so great are the characters and the way that Colson Whitehead is able to humanize these criminals, which they are essentially. These are men committing crimes, but we see their motivations as pure, and we can't help but love them because of it. They are also kind of going against the bigger powers with higher levels of corruption, and you see them almost as these cogs in the machine, but also they're just doing what they need to in order to survive in this city. It kind of reminds me of Sopranos in that way, that you catch glimpses into these criminals' lives and you find things to relate to, or motivations or stories that they have that make you realize that maybe they're not so bad, and you definitely find yourself like rooting for them in the end. What else do I love about these? I mean, the writing is just brilliant. If you're looking for something that is good writing, a bit more plotty, fast-paced, slick, smooth, but also has some depth to it. It's dealing with some interesting themes about racial tensions, political tensions, class, then these books are for you. I could definitely see these turned into a film or a TV series. So yeah, I love them. I hope we get more from Mr. Carney. Next, I've read Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. This is based on a true story. It's set in an Irish, well, it's based on true history, sorry, probably not a true story, but it's set in a small Irish town. We are following a man who is the local coal and firewood distributor for this village, and he's a family man. He has 5 daughters and a wife, and it's Christmas time, and he, during one of his deliveries to the local convent, comes across this young girl who looks as though she's been left out in the cold all night, and he discovers that she belongs to the school that the local convent run, and immediately he's like, I need to do something about this. So what this man has actually come across or discovered is a Magdalen laundry, which was an institution that ran in Ireland and perhaps even throughout England. I know there were definitely ones in Auckland as well, in New Zealand. But yeah, it ran for more than 200 years. Like, it's crazy. These Magdalen laundries were places that fallen women were sent, and that included sex workers, also like pregnant teens. It's basically like any woman that challenged the traditional morals of Irish society at the time. There they were sent and basically used as free labour, but also physically and emotionally abused. Many of them who were pregnant and went there had their babies taken away from them. Many of them died there. Yeah, it's a pretty horrific part of Irish history that was, I think, quite well known amongst communities. This book is kind of highlighting that community silence and the complicity to those bad things and how kind of self-betterment got in the way of anyone speaking out against these things. Like I said, we have this character who is a father and he has 5 daughters and he discovers this horrific thing, but these sisters have and their school have a massive kind of influence on this family, and they want to send their girls there and they want them to be able to do well. So there are these levels of not wanting to speak out and rock the boat, or for fear of what the backlash could be for yourself. Yeah, I mean, I thought this book was fine. I don't really understand what a lot of the hype was around it, but I had a few conversations with some people on Instagram, and I think the love for this book also comes from being Irish and perhaps the representation of what it looks like to be Irish, which I am kind of interested in. It's definitely something that I find fascinating, the way that their history has kind of shaped them as a people, as being this kind of quiet, not really outspoken people. And yeah, I'm kind of interested to learn more about that, but I don't necessarily think I connect with that as much as someone who is Irish or who has Irish heritage or is familiar with that would. So yeah, I think that's perhaps where the lacking of connection was for me. I enjoyed the writing. I thought that she was able to do a lot in the few pages that she had. Yeah, didn't quite understand the massive hype around that one. Next up, I read Bonjour Trace by Francoise Sagan. This is another coming-of-age story, actually, set in the south of France. A summer story, very hot, very sticky, very sweaty, much like today's weather. Our protagonist and narrator for the story is Cecile. She is a 19-year-old girl on holiday with her father and his much younger than him girlfriend, when they are visited by Anne, a family friend of theirs who comes along and starts to disrupt the picturesque south of France holiday that this family is having. Cecile is a young girl who has grown up with perhaps not the most traditional childhood. Her mother died when she was young, and she's been brought up by her father, who is probably lacking in some of the more like practical, maybe even maternalistic values that a young girl should be taught. He's interested in beautiful things and beautiful people and having a good time, and that's the lifestyle that she is kind of grown used to, and from there has established this very carefree nature to herself. And then we have Anne, who was a friend of her mother's and has always tried to guide Cecile. She has been much more of that kind of maternal, motherly figure that she needed, but in quite a strict and rigid way. She has always tried to impart proper etiquette and ways of behaving. Those two things are at odds in this book for Cecile. She is at a very pivotal point in her life where she is ready to finish high school or finish university, I don't know. Anyway, she's ready to kind of be done with her schooling and set out into the world on her own. But she is struggling internally a lot with who she wants to be, whether she should follow this much more kind of presentable, appeasing person, or follow much more of her free-spirited, fun side. Yeah, we get a lot of really beautiful internal dialogue from Cecile as she is grappling with these two sides of herself. She's very confused. She feels very guilty about some of her kind of normal, natural responses to situations. she, in a lot of ways, has been forced to grow up very quickly and forced into these very adult situations that are not of her making. She acts like the mediator for a lot of these issues when she really should just be being a kid and having fun and falling in love, but instead she is dealing with things that most people her age probably shouldn't. Yeah, so this book is, like I said, a coming of age story, but it's very much dealing with the tough decision of the tough pressures that we put on young people to become a certain person at such a young age and to establish oneself so firmly, and how we see that in Cecile, this kind of back and forth questioning is much more of a realistic kind of approach to what it means to grow up and make decisions, and that it's not always going to be straightforward and easy, and that making mistakes is fine and not getting it right the first time is totally normal. I loved this book so much. It definitely has some really beautiful and profound lines about self-discovery and dealing with emotions as a young person and being able to articulate those as well. Really, really, really recommend this book. Itchy neck. Okay, next I read Desperate Characters by Paula Fox. This is a story about a couple who live in New York City. The story is told over a few days, but it starts off with the wife being bitten by a stray cat that she's been feeding. And at first she tries to keep the secret of the bite from her husband. But as it reddens and pusses and throbs and gets worse, she can't help it. She has to tell him. And she also proceeds to tell everyone that she comes in contact with in those days following, all of whom are like, you need to get this checked out, this is bad, it looks horrible. This cat may or may not be rabid, so she of course has that fear in the back of her mind and is not really wanting to address it in case, for fear that she has to then deal with the consequences of that. That's basically what the story is. It's about denying the potential truth of the mess that the peoples have made in this story of their own lives. This couple, their own relationship, the ways in which they've chosen to ignore elements of it, and we see some quite rabid behaviour from the husband towards the wife. He's dealing with a fallout from his business partner that has gone bad, and a lot of that is seeping into their relationship. We find out she's had an affair and seems very much in denial about her actions and what kind of consequences that could have on her marriage. And then in the background we also have the city itself that they live in. We're watching this couple kind of recognize and notice the growing poverty and disparity of the city, and making their judgments towards these people, really passing judgment on these people and the lives that they live, and, questioning what these people have done in order to find themselves in these situations. This was one of those books that at first I was like, oh, it's kind of just okay and a little bit boring, but the more I've thought about it afterwards, and kind of the denial that this couple is in about everything is just quite humorous, and I think is presented in quite a humorous way through these characters. So I would recommend this if you're after something quite fast paced. It was quite easy to read and had a little bit of an interesting kind of tension there. The tension of her not addressing the cat bite for a while was building a lot in this book, and it honestly had me on edge at some points, which I found quite interesting. But I enjoyed this now that I reflect on it a bit more. Next, I read Poor Things by Alasdair Gray. I discovered that this is what you would call a frame narrative. I discovered that through the Sunny's Book Club discussion, which I watched and which I'll link below if you haven't seen it, but you've read this book and maybe want to hear some people talk about it. I recommend going and watching that. It was really good. That's on CJ's channel, but I'll link it below. I didn't know what a frame narrative was, but this is it apparently. No, it is not apparently. It's basically a story within a story. So it sets itself up to tell you, probably in the introduction, well, this one does anyway, in the introduction, what is about to kind of be laid out in the rest of the book. So yeah, it's a story within a story, but this touts itself as a piece of like historical fact told through journals and diaries. The main part of the story is narrated by Archibald McCandless, or Archie we'll call him. He is a young doctor in training. He meets another doctor in training named Godwin Baxter, and McCandless discovers that Godwin has created a woman, and he's done that by taking the corpse of a woman, taking the unborn baby inside her and putting that child's brain, or that baby's brain, back inside the woman. And so he's created this woman, and her name is Bella Baxter. Bella is essentially, she starts off as this child baby in a woman, a fully grown woman's body. And so she has zero inhibitions, zero amounts of shame, and she's very quickly like developing mentally. And as she is kind of gaining and growing her own agency, she kind of like outgrows the men around her, all of whom are trying to in some ways like have her and control her and own her to varying degrees. This book is about a woman's agency. It's about sexual desire and sexual pleasure, and it's about the patriarchal levels that a woman has to push through in order to have agency over herself, over her body, her career, her sexual desire, everything basically. This is another book that I have grown to enjoy more after reading. Through reading other reviews and perhaps digging a little deeper, it definitely has some like slower parts in it where it's a lot of like letters and back and forth and stuff like that didn't necessarily stick with me that much, but overall as a story and the themes that it was dealing with, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really funny. There's a scene towards the end where like 5 or 6 men stand up one after the other to object to this marriage, and they're like, this is why I have evidence that this marriage shouldn't go forward, and it's just hilarious and comical to me because it all has to do with, you know, this woman not having agency over herself and men speaking for her and making all these decisions for her, and I just found it hilariously funny. Can't wait to see the film. I'm looking forward to seeing how it's been adapted. I think perhaps it hasn't dealt with a lot of the themes that the book goes into, which is understandable. That's a hard thing to do. Visually, as a visual thing, I'm really excited to see it. And also to see Emma Stone, because I think she's going to be brilliant in it. And I think she's going to win the Oscar. That's Poor Things. Highly recommend. Yeah, I have nothing else to say. Okay, and the last book that I read in January was On Freedom. 4 Songs of Care and Constraint by Maggie Nelson. This was my book club's January pick. Unfortunately, I missed the chat, which happened on Monday, yesterday, but I was sick. So I missed out on that, but it sounds like the book chat discussion popped off enough that everyone's pretty keen to have another session on this. So that's exciting. I will hopefully be able to make that one and get to discuss it with people. I am feeling a little like shy about talking about this one. Shy is not the right word. I'm not confident talking about this book, to be honest. I'm not going to pretend like it all sank in perfectly. This is a very academic text, I feel, and I found it hard to approach. At times I felt quite dumb reading it. But overall, I feel like I did get something out of it. Maggie Nelson's work is often challenging for me. I try to push past that discomfort that I feel initially, or always being able to understand everything that I read, because I know that there's eventually going to be an understanding or a clicking. Sorry, I haven't really spoken about what it's about. Basically, it's a collection of essays on the concepts of freedom through 4 different themes. So you have art, sex, drugs, and climate. Basically, Maggie Nelson is framing those 4 things and how, asking the question like how does freedom exist within these realms? What does it look like in today's society filled with cancel culture and concepts of freedom being adopted by the alt-right? It's super interesting, is what I will say. But I don't necessarily think it's like very accessible for everyone. I'm gonna perhaps save my thoughts for my book club, discuss it a bit more there, because I don't know, I feel a bit vulnerable sharing those here. I don't know. Okay, yes, cool. So that's everything that I read in the month of January. Thank you for watching. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if you have any thoughts, opinions, feelings you would like to share in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Also, let me know if you have any recommendations and what your favourite read of the month of January was. Okay, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time, hopefully when I'm not sick. Okay, bye!